Welcome to Truth Telling with Elizabeth D'Alto, the podcast dedicated to focusing on the truth that is always evolving within us and around us, where we explore the potentiality of truth as a highly esteemed value at a time in history when most people have more on their plates than any one human should. If you're new to me, full expression is my jam. Some words people have used to describe me range from speaker, trainer, coach, healer, writer, spiritual advisor, teacher, podcaster, and someone even called me their soul Sherpa once. I'm less concerned with titles or labels and more interested in results, change, and creating a world we want to, can, and are proud to live in. A kinder, gentler, more curious, collaborative, reverent world where people respect each other's backgrounds, experiences, and truths. They trust in themselves, in life, and recognize that we need each other. And they know how to cultivate healthy relationships to true power, not the very unhealthy kind of power our current culture is predicated upon. Speaking of our culture, there's a lot of noise and ignorance in our current culture, and this show aims to cut through that by exploring the truths of a diverse range of incredible voices. From authors, artists, creatives, and educators to activists, speakers, and those in various scientific and esoteric fields, our guests hail from cultures and countries all over the world. We post a new interview every Monday, and if you want to keep up with the show notes and quotes from our guests, you can follow me on Instagram at Elizabeth D'Alto. You can expect a wide range of topics when you tune into this show. Everything from health, communication, money, success, parenting, desire, sex, love, and spirituality, to making pivots and transitions in life, and topics related to psychology, storytelling, gender and race issues, emotional intelligence, activism, advocacy, and much more. A few disclaimers. No episode of the show is meant for everyone, and every episode is meant for whoever needs it on the right day at the right time. Not all guest views will reflect my own, and that's intentional. We don't learn, grow, heal, or improve by staying in our comfortable bubbles with all of our people who look, think, or live exactly how we do. If you love what you hear and find it useful and inspiring, the best way to show your appreciation is to share the episode, subscribe to the show, and leave us a rating and review wherever you listen in from. Thank you so much for being here with me. Here we go. What's up, everybody? This is episode number 275 of Truth Telling with Elizabeth D'Alto, and today's interview is a deep and soulful one with Shanda Catrice. Shanda is someone whose writing online is always packed with healing wisdom, and her big truth was, you don't get to know, meaning in life, we don't get to see around the corner all the time. From there, we spent a lot of time on love and relationships. We got into attachment theory, the idea of dating sober, and some different dating intentions and archetypes that I'd never considered before, so it was super interesting. We also talked about divorcing ourselves from our cultural stories, how empaths are both born and created, and building capacity for all of life's joys and challenges, while honoring the circumstances in the world as well as who we truly are. I enjoyed this one so much and hope you do too. The show notes will be over at untameyourself.com/TT-275. Again, that's untameyourself.com/T as in truth, T as in telling -275. Let's get into the show. Yes, everyone. I'm really excited. Do you prefer, I'm sure people say it differently, but Shanda or Shonda?
Shanda.
You say Shanda.
Shanda because that's the given name. But
yeah, as I was about to say it, I'm like, in my brain, I always say Shanda, but I don't know that I've said it out loud before. It's just double checking. I let people hear me do that sometimes. I'm not going to not include this. I'm excited for Shanda to be here because I love following and reading her posts. We have certainly a lot of similar and aligned beliefs about healing and transformation. But what I love about you is sometimes like the way you put something or the way you'll frame it in a story or a specific way you'll articulate puts words to things that I haven't been able to put words to yet. And like, I'm such a word nerd, so that really makes me happy and excited. So I'm really glad you're here. What is a truth right now that's having a big impact on your life?
The truth that's had a big impact for a while now, but really right now is that you don't get to know. Like you don't get to see what's around the corner or what's happening or what's coming. And particularly if you want to live an aligned life, like we're all striving for different things, but if you want to live that soul-driven, heart-centered, aligned life, that comes from that yin space, that dark unknown. So my analytical self, because I am a Gemini cusp, does not like that. And that is the truth that I am sitting with right now, that in order for my life to move in the way that I want it to, I have to get comfortable with this unknown.
I can relate to this a million times. I have Gemini rising and my North Node. And I'm also a Virgo. So like, I think this is why I do embodiment work, because if I didn't, I'd be driving myself nuts in my brain.
Yeah, nuts.
All the time. So how is that, if you feel like sharing, you don't have to, how is that showing up for you right now?
Well, it's showing up for me right now, even more, particularly in my business, in my love life. So I am an excellent dater. Like, I am a wonderful dater. I can manifest dating like nobody's business. I can say today, I want to go on a date tonight, and some man I know will call me up and say, hey, I want to take you out. But this deeper soul alignment, or this partnership I am calling into my life, requires me not to plan it out, requires me not to say, okay, I'm going to go on. Like, when I first was trying to call in this soulmate life partner into my life, I did it like in a math equation. I said, this is something you got to figure out. You go on X amount of dates in this many time. By, November, I'll be married, and next June or something, I'll have a baby. But I realized, back to that unknown, like, this is not a problem that I can solve with a linear or logical mind.
Yeah, and I think that we want to approach things that way because we're sold so many formulas. Like, I can think of the specific book that made the suggestion, and I can think of a girlfriend who actually did the thing because her friend told her she did, where she's like, I'm going to go on 52 dates this year, because if I go on a date every single week, just like by the law of averages, I'm bound to meet someone, whatever. And she did end up meeting her future husband on date number 6. And a good friend of hers had done the same thing, like committed to going all in, I'm going to do the thing. And she met her husband. But like, I love to hear those stories, but just because that worked for those two women doesn't mean that like that is a formula or a framework that like works for everyone, And
also, it doesn't mean that it really worked for those women. We don't really know their intention. So for me, if my intention is to have this spiritual partnership, this fellow entrepreneur mate, someone who also is vegetarian or maybe eventually going vegan, and have all these different points and visions, someone who, does plant medicine and likes the darkness and going on journeys, someone who wants to live in a tiny house or spend a year vanning around the world. That may not be something I can formalize. That may not be someone I can go on 52 dates and meet. That may be something that I have to just be centered and aligned in myself and do the things I love and be working on myself, and let serendipity, AKA God, universe, source, higher power, bring the person into my life. Because everyone is like, even a business, like even my own coaching and healing practice, some people are doing a business, some people are doing a calling. I am doing a calling. Yes. And when you're doing a calling, the formula comes from spirit, unknown. It doesn't come from the millionaire marketer,
Yeah. And listen, those of you listening, this is a discernment. It's not a judgment. We're not saying, like, I'm on the same page. I'm with Shanda on this. And we're not saying that our path or our way is better, but it's the one we're choosing. And it's just it's a nonlinear path. It's a path where the bricks are not pre-laid out for us.
But it's about the right path for you. So this path, in that sense, is the right path because it's the right path for me. And that is what alignment is. I don't know what works for your life. I know what is working for mine, and it's not always what I'm choosing. It's not always what I want. The path for me is not always what I want it to be. Most of the time, it's not what I want it to be. So it's about an aligned life. And to have an aligned life, you have to figure out who you are, like, who am I beyond my name, my title, my position, my accolades, my community. if that was stripped away and there was no one left on planet Earth but Elizabeth or Shanda, who would we be when no one's looking, when no one's watching?
Yes. So this is, I started dating around like end of February, March this year. So I was dating for like five or so months, and I'm taking another break from it because really what I'm taking a break from is dating apps. And by taking a break from dating apps, I think I'm probably never going to use them again because I don't think that's going to be my path, but I'm glad I tried it. But I'll tell you something funny, and I'd love to hear any experience that you might have if you've done dating apps. I'm super clear on like what you said, the type of person I want. And what you just said is what made me think of this is I need to know myself. And I realized I need to be with someone that knows himself. Like literally knows himself, respects himself, likes himself, and is confident. That's when like that list of like the things you were saying, would go vanning with me or is also an entrepreneur. Like I have these like loose things like that, but my big rock things are knows who he is, likes himself, respects himself, is confident. Because I have found the biggest issues for me come up when people don't. Because as a person who is a healer, just by nature, I've tried to resist it, but it's just who I am. I will then call in the people that need fixing. And I'm not.
And that's a tweak. And that doesn't have to be because you're a healer, you call those people in. Your wounded healer part of you call those people in.
Right.
You can call in a very equal, powerful and potent healer also to come into your life. So it is understanding that, and then understanding, like, even for me, like with those little things I describe, I always say, no, like you're a what behind the why, or the why behind the what. So if I want $1 million, why do I want it? Like, so me, the vanning around the world is about freedom. Yeah. So I want a man that also shares this love of freedom and is free spirited. So that means that I am a free spirit. I am a little bit quirky, a little bit eccentric. I have different thoughts on most things. I don't think anything conventional. My life is very unconventional. So behind those little fantasies, I know what the real qualities are. I know I need someone that is equally unconventional because we won't work. And what I used to do a long time ago when I was going to my healer, I would date men, because my former life of being in the government and corporate America, I would date these super successful C-level executive type men, and I would present as the woman they would like. And we would get 6 months in our relationship, and then quirky Shanda would come out, and the relationship would start to go down. And my healer was saying, you are the one that's doing a disservice to them because you're not being totally authentic and honest. Yeah. They want, the Michelle Obama type. And I'm like more like Cree Summer from A Different World or something, And she said, if you had you shown up, as Cree Summer to begin with, you would have met a man who is looking for Cree Summer. Yeah. Who is looking for the boho, spiritual healer, earthy, artistic woman, instead of the man who, and that's nothing wrong with that. I had to be okay with that. So for me, there was some wounding around that. Yeah. There was wounding that I wouldn't be totally accepted because, going back into the work that I really do now is about healing those childhood wounds, healing those deep traumas. And so in my past, in my family, I was always the weird one, the different one. When I grew up in Chicago, the Midwest, I was always the weird one, the different one. So a lot of my core programming and wound is I want to fit in. Yeah. I want to belong, which is why I took a government job in the first place, because I was determined that I was going to have this life that everyone else wanted me to have and expected me to have.
I love that you worked in the government, like imagining you buttoning it up.
I couldn't manage it now, but at the time it was. I worked there almost a decade.
That's so wild. So that thing that you said, which I wrote down here, know the why behind the what, that's how I've arrived at those qualities. Knows himself, likes himself, respect, whatever, right? And like you said, the wounded healer, I realized that. And I'm like, I'm just not interested in creating that dynamic. And if I don't start looking for different markers, I'll just keep creating the dynamic, right? So I wrote that in, I was using an app called Hinge. And it was like, there was all these little prompts. It was like, send a message if, and I wrote this. I'm like, you know yourself, like yourself, respect yourself, and you're the type of person who shows up on time and will do what you say you're going to do. And I had responded to this guy. I don't know if I've told this story on the show before. With some guy's profile, his prompt was like, tell me your favorite Disney princess and I'll tell you 3 things about yourself. And I'm like, whether or not I'm interested in this person, this is a good prompt. I'm hooked. Like, this shit worked. So I told him, I was like, Princess Jasmine, Ariel, and Belle. I'm like, all the rebellious ones. He's like, yeah. He's like, my guess is a lot of men can't handle you. You should probably write in your profile that you like tacos and girly drinks. I was like,
no. No, but I stopped doing the dating online for a while. Like, I'm in this period now that, from my own mentor and healers, I did not want to hear it. My own teacher told me that this is a period that I need to be comfortable with being alone. Mm-hmm. So I'm not like a serial monogamist, but I am a serial dater. Yeah. And I have a lot of micro relationships where 4 months, 6 months, sometimes a year, but like 4 months, 6 months, 4 months, 6 months. And I do that all the time. And it's easy for me. And I realize that whenever I feel lonely or it's a space in my life or I need distraction from things I don't really like to feel or look at, I would go have men take me on dates and have these amazing experiences. And so my teacher was telling me, it's time to be alone. Mm. It's time to really, for real be alone and get to be in that space with yourself. And then just be in a receiving in a more feminine energy, and not necessarily about, gender, but the principle of feminine energy, which is more inward and yin, and allowing the person to come to you, to be the magnet and to attract. Because I'm not saying it's wrong. If it works, I'm always like this. If it works, then we have nothing to talk about. Yeah. But for all the people who it's not working for, this is the message.
Yes.
So not being in a masculine action of going out and getting on dating apps, trying to get on these dates, that's a very masculine base. So already as a woman, you're just like a micro shift in your energy is really affecting how you date. So being alone, and that's where I'm at right now. And also, I do a lot of work in attachment theory too. The study says that, the people with the most insecure attachments are online. I think about 80% of people online have attachments, because people with insecure attachments, they are not good in relationships. So this will be the prime place for them to continuously have, like I was, micro relationships. And then if that doesn't work, they can go back in and in a week meet somebody else.
That's so interesting. Yeah, I love, so you just said something that I didn't want to let it pass. I appreciate that you articulated the feminine principle. And I know we're having a very heteronormative conversation, but I know you do work with people around love. And I'm curious if you have experience, because I obviously never want people speaking to things they don't have experience with. Do you have experience working with people who are not in heterosexual relationships?
I do. Cool. I have experience working with women who identify as lesbian, transgender, also gay men. So this works for everyone.
That's really what because like sometimes people say like it's not a binary, but like the energetics of a thing exist within all people. And so when I'm curious for me, and like I'll waive my ignorance a little bit because I just don't have experience with it. How does that, I do know for sure that it's not like, for example, a gay couple, it's not like someone plays the role of the man, someone plays the role of the woman. I'm curious, what does the dance of the energy look like when people are the same sex?
Well, a lot of times you have, like I have, one of my clients is a lesbian, identifies as lesbian, queer, and identifies, her pronoun is she. So, but she is a provider in that relationship. Mm-hmm. So she's aware that she exhibits more masculine energy. She doesn't feel that she is a man, but she's more of the provider. So in every coupling, there will be the principle of feminine and masculine principle. Mm-hmm. We have now just become in our culture, this culture of the binary, and we take it to mean gender or sexuality. But in spirituality, this exists. I was having a discussion with a friend. I was saying that, every animal needs both to reproduce,
Yeah.
male and female. She was like, oh, wait, no, there are some animals who, don't need an opposite sex. They can reproduce with themselves. And I was saying, but if you look into those animals, usually those animals still have both. They still have the male and the female organ, or the system that is a male and a female type system that when it's time to reproduce will come together. So even self-reproducing animals and organisms have two sides.
Yeah.
And that is the world we live in. It's duality. It is the principle: sun, moon, up, down, light, light, dark.
Yin yang.
Yeah, that's where we live. And that's how we are as a person. And we have both of those inside of us, but we come into this world primarily with one dominant.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm curious, I was involved on a post recently where have you ever, I just straight up want your opinion, have you ever gotten into or read like the David Data stuff, the Polarity stuff?
No, I haven't. I'm aware of him, but I haven't read the Polarity.
Okay, cool. That we don't need to go down
his particular Polarity stuff.
Yeah, we don't need to go down the rabbit hole then. I was just curious if you had what you thought of it and how it fits into like your context of belief systems. So I appreciate this, and I want to come to something that you said there, a provider, because I feel like also now that women in general have more like rights and access to things, a lot more women are providing. And not necessarily by choice, like I can think of relationships. I know of people in my family where the woman became the breadwinner, but didn't necessarily want that role. How do you notice that affects like the energetic balances or harmonies, like within relationships and within people themselves,
Well, it depends. I mean, and going to a little bit back to what you were saying about polarity, every relationship needs polarity. So if you became a provider by default in that relationship and the mate you used to have, no matter what sex, used to be a provider, then there is going to be a problem. If you are a provider and the mate you have was always, more of a mate that was in a receiving mode, then that can work.
Yeah.
But if you're switching into the same role that the mate served, there will be a problem. It will be, because there's no polarization. It'll go flat. And then that way people become roommates and not lovers.
Right.
And not romantic partners. They're roommates. They're best friends or BFFs.
Yeah. And I mean, primarily you're saying provider and the implication is financial. So how do you notice, like, I think intellectually, many of us understand that there's all kinds of things that people provide for each other within a relationship. And it's our deep, deep programming and conditioning that like the financial providership is like the tops. So I'm curious about your opinion on that.
Well, if you are a financial provider, is this going to be long-term? Is this short-term? I mean, that's something you have to look at. Do you want to be the financial provider for the long term? And is your partner on board with this? Everything to me, it goes down to communication. What type of relationship does your partner want? Does your partner want you to be the provider long term? Or is it that I just need your help right now?
Yeah.
So that is the issue that you have to first identify. And then, as a woman, it's particularly heterosexual, but does not have to be limited to. But if I all of a sudden became a financial provider, then I have to up it to look to my man to still be in a masculine energy.
Yeah.
So that doesn't mean that I take on masculine energy. That doesn't mean now. I was that way when I worked for the government. When I worked for the government, I made a multiple six-figure salary. I dated men. At the time, I thought I couldn't find one that had the same amount of money. So I dated men who I usually made 3 times as much. And I ran that relationship like someone who made 3 times as much. I decided where we eat. I decided the vacation. I decided what we paid for things. So I was really in that, and the relationship fell flat because the men I were dating were masculine identified, energetic men. And they did not, it made them feel, it brings down their masculinity levels inside.
Yeah.
And so funny thing happened when I left corporate America, when I left the government, and I became a coach and a healer. my energy shifted. So when I was in the government and I had this multi-six-figure salary, I bought my own home by the time I was 30. I had this list of, things. I made six figures by the time I was 27, blah, 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 put myself to school, all these male action things. Couldn't get a man to save my life. I mean, not saying you have to have a man, but it was so difficult for me to get into relationships with men. And I didn't understand why. Then I shift to being a coach and I'm magnetic.
So
and
interesting.
The men I can go somewhere and men will open my door. I don't even ask. They will offer to buy coffees. It's just me being me. And that's what happens. Because my energy shifted.
Well,
and so that energy shifted with the men too.
And to go back to what you were saying earlier, it seems and certainly feels like you're more in alignment with like who you actually
and who
are.
I am.
Yeah.
Which wasn't, and it's back to circumstance in the world versus who I am. I am, for me, I am a female identified woman and I like that energy. So that was natural to me. I was only being the other way out of circumstance and the wound again. So I put myself through college because my father died when I was like 19 or 20. So that's not something that I was naturally that person. Right. My client, I was saying, she's naturally in that energy. That is who she is. And that works because it is about understanding, well, what energetic do I relate to more? So I have a lot of my girlfriends and they always ask me, they say, and I hate this term alpha beta, but I'm going to use it right now. They will say, I want an alpha man. I want an alpha man. And they are really in their masculine energy. And I tell them, I said, well, an alpha man doesn't want you. And they would look like, no, I can get an alpha man. And I'm thinking, no, you can't. I said, you have two choices. You have to either date beta men or you have to not be an alpha woman in your relationships. You can be an alpha woman and have a business and run your business as an alpha. But when you relate to your partner, if that's what you choose, if you want that type of alpha man, the polarity is going to require you to go into a beta. And we have a negative association with alpha beta. It does not mean a beta man is wimpy and, they're still masculine men. It's just a way that they relate. Yeah. It's a little different.
Yeah. And this is something that I love. This is why I love the exploration of masculine and feminine energy, yin yang, solar lunar, however you want to call it, because it shows us how dynamic we are and that the way we show up in one area of our life does not have to be the way we show up in another. I know there's that saying, how we do anything is how we do everything, but that is more about like how we show up, right?
Yeah,
not necessarily the energy we bring to a particular space when there is a different like dynamic that you're working with. Like, and I can say, for example, my mom at her job for many, many years, she just recently retired after 32 years, and she had worked her way up to like a high level manager position. And so sometimes when she would come home, she would need a little transition time to like relax, like, because sometimes she'd be like barking orders at us and we'd always joke like, hey, we don't work for you, Yeah. And it's like, and she's like, oh yeah, and it would like take her a minute to like switch back into like, okay, like I'm home, I'm with my family. This is different. I don't like, I'm not necessarily in charge here. There's a little different of a dynamic.
And what's the story that we're telling ourselves? We have to divorce from these society stories and our environments and the cultural stories. Because like me, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm going to be an entrepreneur. This works for me. It's who I am. So any man that comes into my life, I'm not going to be the June Cleaver. I'm going to really, and you can tell my energy is very nurturing. It's very warm. And that's what I would be. If you saw my man sitting next to me now, I would have a very feminine energy with him. You would tell that he is an alpha, but you're not going to stop me from living my dreams. And I'm very ambitious. I've always been.
Yes.
I like goals. I like to achieve them. I like to push myself. So we have to be able to hold two opposing ideas at the same time in our lives. So you can be successful and you can be an entrepreneur. You can be a businesswoman. You can be whatever woman you want. And then you can also understand the dynamic between masculine and feminine energy, regardless of your gender, regardless of your sexual orientation.
Yeah. I love this again, because this is one of the things, and what's reminding me as I'm looking out in the world, especially because of the environment of social media the way it is these days, we can make, this is why I don't like dating apps, we can make all kinds of assumptions about people based on what they've chosen to share about themselves.
Yes.
And for me, to go back to that app Hinge, the basis for that one is that it's like friends of friends or something, or like 6 degrees of separation. And once you match with someone, it gives them your last name. And I didn't love that people would look me up and they'd find like all my stuff and all my content and go to my YouTube channel and they're finding my breast massage video. And that's like the first thing they're honing in on. And I'm like, but there's no context to it. And then you're like making all these assumptions about me. And people assume that I would want to be like alpha in a relationship. And I'm like, exact opposite, actually. Because I'm, like you're saying, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm ambitious, I'm like working, I'm calling the shots in my business. In my relationship, I want to like relax. I want to be taken care of, provided for. Not necessarily financially, but like I certainly don't want to be calling the shots all the time or have that expectation. And
in order so when you are in that space and you do things that people will read as more masculine based, and that kind of woman is very important to be in a lot of raw feminine energy, like getting in touch with what raw femininity is. And then the man is attracted to that. Men are attracted to heterosexual men are attracted to feminine, raw feminine energy. So if you have that energy, that is what's pulling them in.
Yeah.
That is what, not how many, businesses or deals you landed and all those things, but you come to them in that. And so for me, the online dating, why I stopped, it's because we had a conversation a long time ago about attachment theory.
Yeah.
Where I talk about my style. So my style in the way that I do it, the technical term would be love addicted, which sounds so bad. But my term in my work that I do is called love pursuer. So as the love pursuer,
that feels way better.
It feels way better than love addicted. Love addicted is like wah. Like really? But when you are a love pursuer, you like fantasy, I chase. And so for me, when I get online dating, I see a man and the theme song to Dirty Dancing. Like that, this is exactly what happened. If a man picks up my can from the floor, I'm already like, they're like stars and fireworks and everything.
Wait, I'm literally laughing so hard because several months ago, I don't remember why, for some reason I thought of that song. I'm like, I haven't listened to this in forever. And I queued it up on Spotify and I'm listening to the lyrics and I'm like, damn, this is what I want. You're the one thing I can't get enough of. I'm like, that's what I want.
That's me. I meet any man. I'm telling you, this is what happens in the mind of a love pursuer. Yeah. You're so into fantasy. So you have to actually date sober, is what I call dating sober.
Yeah.
You have to snap yourself out of fantasy. So I can't online date because, I've told this story before, so I'm okay with telling it. But so
I'm excited.
Early in the summer, let me go back. I was talking about Maori man and a haka, and you probably saw on Facebook for a while. I would post the videos like, oh my gosh, I gotta get me this haka Maori man. Like if a man shows up and he's a Maori man, like I'm getting married. This is it. Yeah.
So pause for 1 second. If anyone doesn't know what that is, can you just tell them what it is real quick?
So I don't know if I'm going to do a good job of describing it, but Maori is indigenous culture to New Zealand.
Yeah.
New Zealand.
Yeah.
And so the haka is a ceremonial war chant that they would do to prepare for war. And now it's done to welcome people. If you're coming to visit, they welcome visitors. They do it in marriage, like in weddings. And it's this really rich, joyful ceremony that can look kind of scary if you see it, but it is raw.
If you're like us, it's like the hottest thing you've ever seen in your life. Look it up on YouTube, people listening.
Haka. Yeah, Haka. It is the rawest, hottest, primal, divine, sacred form of masculinity when you see men doing this. So I was just like, I gotta get me one of these men. So I was on Bumble and
You're looking for your.
Oh, I wasn't looking for it. I was on Bumble and I was doing my swipe thing, doing my swipe. I matched and I, texted someone. We talked. We went out, and this man was from New Zealand. He was in America just for the summer, and he was a Maori haka, haka. And I was like, oh my God, I've met my soulmate. The universe has heard me. It knows how this is serendipity. How on earth? And my friend was like, my colleagues and my friend, they were like, Shanda, you've met like the only Maori man in LA. Like you've met the only one
on Bumble.
On Bumble. So that it's it.
You are so magical.
Yeah. You look at you manifesting. And all the while, the only song that's playing in my head is the Dirty Dancing song. And I'm like, here we're gonna get married. I got this. I finally got him.
I got him.
But it didn't work, and it wasn't a good match, and I was really sad.
Yeah.
But more so not because of the person, but because of this whole fantasy that he didn't even know was happening like a year or two before I ever met him. So when he showed up, everything I ever thought when I saw those videos about those kind of men, I put onto him.
This is an amazing point.
Mm-hmm. And he couldn't live up to him. And he was really attractive. So that's also my Achilles heel. So he was really attractive, and he was, and I was like, "You're gonna do the haka for me? You're gonna do the, are you gonna do the haka
in my living room?"
In my living room. and I just thought, okay, and I had this fantasy of me going to New Zealand and us getting married, and I'm moving to New Zealand now and living this boho free spirit New Zealand life.
Yeah, with my haka
man and my haka friend, and my biracial haka children.
Oh yes.
But that didn't happen.
Yeah.
He went back to New Zealand. I never heard from him ever again.
This is also something I love about when you actually do like your real deal, your healing, your deep work, you go into your shadow, you can laugh hysterically about some of the shit that's been the most painful in your life later.
And it was painful because, and this is what happens when you're the lover pursuer, I was sad about the fantasy.
Yeah.
And I was sad about, now I'm still alone. I didn't really get the man of my dreams, and it has to be different. And it's not instant rocket ships. So for me, every time I meet a new man, it's instant rocket ships. Like I'm all the way to the moon already. And there's so many fireworks. There's so much chemistry. We're like so engulfed with each other. But I got through my divine intuition the other day, said, Shanda, your man is going to be the person in the corner that you would not see. Yeah. And the one you think, not this really beautiful, attractive. And he may be attractive to me, but he's not going to be this really shiny, shiny man with all of these chemistry and fireworks. He's going to be the man in the corner that I'm thinking like him. He's telling me he's it. And we're probably going to be friends and get to know each other. And it's going to be even keeled. You see how a love pursuer has to have a sober love. Yeah. So it'll probably be even keeled and no drama, which will be boring for me. And I would think he's boring, this boring, nice guy. And that is the one. That is going to be the healthier relationship for this particular love style. Yeah. The one that's more even keeled or the slow burn. Yeah. Not like the instant fireworks.
Quick break in the show to give you a Patreon update. I am loving the platform over there. Some of you know, and some of you are already members over at patreon.com/Elizabeth Untamed. But if you don't know what it's all about, it's this amazing platform that lets artists and creatives and activists and other kinds of entrepreneurs share their work in an exclusive way with fans and followers and people who just want to get access to specific things. So what I post over at Patreon are Wild Soul Movement practice videos, 2 bonus podcast episodes a month, which are very similar to the Sunday sermons for those of you who used to enjoy those. And as well, I recently added a tier for those who are interested in just getting my stand-up comedy clips and videos from shows and open mics and ideas and feedback on premises and punchlines and things that I'm working on as I develop as a stand-up comedian. So it's super fun. The first official show I did a few weeks ago was called Does This Make Me Look Spiritual? And I went all in on my experiences living in a new age hippie community in San Diego for 3 years. So that was super fun. And that full set is up and available in Patreon. So head on over to patreon.com/Elizabeth Untamed. I keep those things exclusively over there. They do not get posted publicly in full anywhere on the internet other than Patreon. So if you're interested in that stuff, head on over to check it out. And now back to the show. I'm 1,000% with you. I've basically landed in the same place in similar fashion. I met this guy on Bumble. I literally almost didn't even swipe on his profile because he was so attractive. I was like, he's probably an asshole. I'm probably setting myself up for disaster. And then I was like, don't be so judgy. Go for it. And it was just like this instant connection, this instant chemistry. It was so fast. And the same, like the romanticizing. So you were calling it fantasy. I'll call it romanticizing of like what this could be and we could build together. And he was into comedy and like he is a comedian and he's so funny. And like that's something I've really, really missed. So I'm not a serial dater. I'm serial monogamist, like not on purpose. It's not like I'm ever looking for relationships.
Yeah.
But something that dawned on me in the last 2 years is like, just because I meet someone great doesn't mean I have to be with them. That was one of my big lessons from this man. It was like, oh, I don't know. Because when I started dating, I'm like, let me do this as a social experiment because I've never actually dated before. I was in relationships for like a decade. And so I really wanted
And you know that's the answer, right? Like
what?
So I was going to say, nothing is ever on purpose. So we have different things. So for you as a serial monogamist, your love, I call it love antidote. Your love antidote would be to date.
Yeah.
To actually date often and date without having to have this culmination into relationship.
Right.
And my love antidote is to actually not date. Spend more time alone and maybe go slower into my relationships and have them be longer. And so those are the things that we find it's a little uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And that is going to be the antidote to get us into the relationships that we really crave and desire.
Yeah.
And that is that work.
And I see it. I see it work because I need the practice of not going all in with someone right away just because they're great. Being willing to walk away and not compromise. Because even with this person, he was so great in so many ways, so aligned. And I was like, oh my God, like I literally had the feeling, which I've never had before. I was like, I think I met my husband. I was like telling people, like, I met my husband.
I've had that, like with the haka.
Yeah. You're like, this is my husband. Because that thing, I'm like, you know how people say when you know? I never had that feeling before. And I like legit had that feeling. And he also was having this, he'd been single for a really long time. And he was like, it was starting to feel like the beginning of a relationship. And I think we both just like, it short circuited our systems because it was like so intense and it was so much chemistry. And there was such a physical attraction. And I noticed for me, because in terms of love languages, physical touch is so big for me that one of the things that I learned in order to be a sober dater is I actually have to go really, really baby steps into physical intimacy. Because if I go all in, which I did with this person, I will then become blind to things that matter outside of like the physicality of things. And so I would agree with you that the antidote for someone like me is to date and to let things, not that I need to like get used to things being casual, but I need to get used to trying things on and taking my time instead of being like, oh, you're great. This feels good. Like, yeah, let's do this.
And then, who says it has to be casual? So that's another shift, another perspective shift. So I used to do this thing with my clients. When I first started coaching, I was dating coach. Then I moved into, life purpose coach. And now I do a lot of wound healing. So that when I was dating coach, I would do this thing called Zen dating and mindfulness dating. So how can you be fully present and be complete in every interaction with the person across from you, so that every relationship is a soulmate relationship. Every relationship is the one. Every date is the one. Mm-hmm. And then that way, if you never saw them again, it's complete.
Yeah.
And I'm present and I'm in my body and I'm just feeling what's going on.
Yeah.
I'm experiencing. And dating is also a good way to see what's your shadow and the things that you don't realize. Because when you start to see what's showing up in your dating life, these are the things that need to heal. And you can use this as training wheels. This is my training to heal these things before I get into my relationship with my one. And this is something that I'm going to do myself. I don't know if I'm going to do the whole year, but I always tell anyone, you want to heal something, commit to a year. Mm-hmm. And that's the hard thing. So like for me, it would look like both ways. If you are a serial monogamous, it would be a commit to a year of dating and make a vow to yourself that no matter what man comes around, you tell them that this year I am being alone. I am going to just do this mindfulness dating. I have a wonderful time with you, but I'm also going to go out with these people. At the end of the year, if you're still here, then yeah, let's go into the relationship. But I'm spending this time to heal, to explore who I am, explore men, and then the same thing with me. Similar aloneness, but it looks different. I'm spending this time to be alone, to get to know me. I am not dating a lot of men. We can be friends, but I'm not dating tons of men every weekend.
Yeah. Because I did almost like the reverse. When I got out of my last relationship, I committed to a year on my own. I was like, I haven't spent a full year on my own in a decade. So I committed to that. And that year turned into a year and a half because I was like basking in it. I'm like, I could really get used to this. I really like being with myself.
But this time a year dating. So for you, it's different because it's a year of.
I know.
I would want you to be on a date at least 1 to 2 times. I mean, once a week would be great for the first couple months, and then maybe at least 2 dates a month.
I could get down with 2 dates a month. Weekly, yeah. I got it.
I would say for the first month, I would just do weekly, just to kind of pop that cherry, like, just for 1 month, weekly. And it can be the same. It could be some similar dates, but I wouldn't start to get down into having like this relationship. But it could be over the course of the year, you're dating some of the same people. I mean, I did that when I had my whole year of dating coaching and getting data from helping my women. Mm-hmm. I had, my cadre of 3 men that I dated. And I told all of them about each other, and I dated them for about 6 months. And they would all take me out on a rotation.
You're like Nola Darling. Have you seen She's Gotta Have It?
Yes, I am. But, mine was I was not having sex with all of them. And then let them know that I wasn't having sex or physical intimacy outside of a committed relationship. So this is like to debunk the whole thing of men will only date you if you're putting, if you're giving something. And all of these men, I mean, they dated me the entire time. I actually stopped dating them. I didn't want to. But none of them, they continuously dated me without physical intimacy.
Interesting. At this day and age.
So not quite like Nola, even though I have nothing wrong with exploring.
So interesting. So I want to specifically come back to, I love that I didn't realize we'd spend so much time on dating, but I'm really glad we did, because I think dating, intimacy, relationships is an incredible cauldron for healing, for the wounds to come up, right? To see, like you're saying, like you're going to see your shadows, you're going to see your things. Even with this most recent guy, I saw in terms of like attachment theory, I haven't studied it probably nearly as deeply as you have. My main familiarity is from the book Attached. But from that book, I was able to glean that my attachment style is secure. However, if someone is avoidant, I will become anxious. And that's in that terminology and context of that book. And so this person was avoidant and I became anxious. And I was like, oh, that doesn't work for me. So,
and, it's just one lens. Like, there are a lot of things. When you said love languages, I started doing this exploration recently about, well, where did these come from? And my main love language is acts of service, and then also physical touch and quality time are tied. Yeah. And I realized back to my, my wound programming and the source of my wound, I'm like, why do I have this? Why am I acts of service? That makes no sense. But I realized my mom was and just probably unintentionally, but just through her own programming and trauma, a very emotionally unavailable woman and mother. And I remember the only time having like one-on-one time with her was when I was helping her clean the house or helping her wash the windows outside or helping her do some kind of task. So early on in my life, I realized what cemented in my head is love means helping someone.
Yeah, I can really, really relate to that.
And that's where it came from for me. And that's why that is my main language still. But I see where it, the origin of that.
Yeah. Something I want to ask you that I've been really, since my last relationship, where after the fact, I realized that my partner was super narcissistic. It was really emotionally abusive. I had read all these books, Alison Armstrong, David Data, all this dating stuff. And I left, and even some of the other healing, kind of teachers, Byron Katie, all these people. I've had this feeling I really wish everyone teaching everything would overemphasize that their shit works with people who are mentally and emotionally healthy.
Yes, it does. And it doesn't work with someone who's not. No,
who's not. And so, we've had lots of conversations and people come on the podcast to talk about what are the signs and signals of that. But I'm just curious for your experience in even dating and relationships and friendships. How do you interact with that? Because where I'm getting at with this is, as someone who still is compassionate and loving and wants to be inclusive, I don't want to just be kicking people to the curb all the time because they have issues, But I also need to take care of my own self and have boundaries. Yes. I know you're also passionate about boundaries and self-care.
About boundaries.
It's really important.
Well, the first one, my first rule is there is no room for a narcissist in my life. So that's my deal breaker.
I agree.
So it doesn't matter who you are, because a narcissist they're not capable of having a healthy relationship.
Right.
And it's one, even scientifically and down to psychology, it is one of the few disorders that they deem as incurable. So I feel if even psychologists are stumped at how to help you, I can't take that on. And
I want to throw
my heart goes out.
Yeah.
But I can't take it on.
I want to throw a yes and on that, because I wouldn't, my former partner, I'm not a psychologist. I'm not going to say this person had
the disorder, not the traits.
Right. But there's hella people with the traits out there,
Well, you have a couple of traits. Some traits are behavioral, meaning my sister, my mother was depressed a lot. Yeah. So my sister went to her therapist, and her therapist had told her that she had behavioral depression, meaning it was a learned way to be. So she learned this through watching a depressed person. Yeah. So my mother was actually a depressed person, but my sister had some of the similar characteristics of depression because she had taken on, this is the way that you go about your day-to-day life. So there are people who are narcissistic and actually diagnosable, and then there are people who are on a spectrum, and there are people who have characteristics. So for me, if you have, and we all have certain characteristics, but if you have predominantly characteristics of being a narcissist, and that's where you come from in the world, and that's your motivation, that's your then perspective, then no, that's my deal breaker. You can't be in my life because you do not know how to you're incapable at that moment of having a healthy relationship, and I can't fix you. Now, for everyone else about kicking your friends to the curb, because I went through that, I had to, I won't say kick them, but I had to release half of my friendships, and some of them released me. But what happened was I had that near-death experience, and in that experience, none of my friends were there the way I wanted them. So I spent a year on disability healing from, a very severely chronic gallbladder removal surgery where I almost died. And in 1 year, no one was there besides my sister, not even my own parents, mother. No one was there. And I was just crying, looking how could this be my life? How could I have lived a whole life and no one's here? And so I asked, God, source, universe, you have to show me what this is. And that's when I found attachment theory. That's when I found ACE, which is adverse childhood experiences. And that's when I started finding all of this work. And then I had a plant medicine journey that woke me the F up. And then I saw that I had picked people from the wound I was sourcing my wounds. So I picked people that mirrored my relationship with my mom. So none of the women in my life knew they weren't nurturing. They did not know how to provide what I needed. And so I had to come to the sober reality of I was not emotionally authentic. I never told people what I wanted out of fear of them leaving me. I have a fear of being alone, abandonment. So I would never tell the women in my life what I needed from them because I was afraid of rocking the boat, disappointing. And if I ever told them what I needed, they would leave. I just stuffed it all down, and it manifested as infected gallbladder that ruptured. And, I was out for a year. And so what I did in that year is I studied, I healed, I went to my teachers, and I started working on myself. And I said, you got to stop being numbed out. You got to start understanding your feelings. You got to get to know this person named Shanda for real. And what does she want? What does she need? What kind of relationships work for her? And I wrote them down because at first, if you don't know this, you got to really write it down. And I wrote the commandments of me, the commandments of Shanda.
I love that.
These are the relationships that I want. This is what I need in a relationship. If I call you or message you, you don't call me back. If I call you twice and you don't return my message, that's my commandment. If you are volatile when I bring up conflict, that's my commandment. If you don't communicate in healthy ways, that's one of my commandments. So then what happens is this, it's easy. If I have my 10 commandments and I'm looking at my friends and you only have one thing on this list, the reality is I really do have to let you go.
Yeah.
Now with all my friends, I didn't just let them go. What I did for me was I came to them and I said, hey, this is what happened to me over the year. I don't know if you knew this. This is what I was feeling. This is what I was experiencing. I am a new person now in many ways. And this is the type of relationship I would like to have going forward. I would like to invite you to get to know the new me. And I would like to invite you to have this relationship. And some of them said, hail to the all and left. Some of them got volatile and said, and ripped me a new one and said how horrible I was. And then there was, a select group of friends, very small. So I did lose most of my friends, very small, that said, hey, I'm going to work on this with you.
I love it.
You're important to me.
The level of discernment, I feel like people might resist and feel afraid of that. And I think that's a real function of codependency when we've become so used to, from most of us, our early childhood experiences, having to bend and fold and compromise to be part of a tribe that functions in an unhealthy way. We get used to, I even, this is something I'm still unraveling myself, noticing the little tiny, they're smaller and more subtle now because I've worked on the big obvious stuff. But it's so fascinating to see the ways that I'll still compromise myself or I'll still bend and then be like, damn. And the small hinge swings the big door on that stuff. So even when it's something small, the impact will be great.
It will be great. And these things add up. And for me, so it's so interesting because I am very opinionated and I never had a problem. I would tell anyone my opinion in a heartbeat and keep it moving. But I would not tell you my emotions. So when people look at me on the outside, it's like she's confident, she's a powerhouse and she's a strong woman and all these different things. But the inside of me, the little girl, wounded girl, is a people pleaser. And, I don't want to rock the boat. I'm either a buffer or a mediator or a people pleaser, or I say yes all the time to everything. And when anybody asks me anything, usually I say yes first and not even think, does it work for me? And then I'll break that yes. And then people hate me even more because now I lack the integrity with them in their view, because I have a different view of integrity, I have this thing I call soul integrity, and then, you have people integrity, where I broke soul integrity with myself, but I broke integrity with the person that I was talking to. And so I learned for a person like me with that, people pleasing of the fear, because out of fear, I have to have a 24-hour yes, meaning I have to wait before I can say 24, yes, 24 hours. And usually that next day I'll know what's true, because I've been numbed out for so long in my feelings that sometimes I don't even know what I feel. I just know I'm just pissed off, but I really don't even know why. Like, I don't know why this is pissing me off, or I'm saying yes to something. I don't even know if I want to go and do it. I have to take that moment to come back to self, because that is that wound. Like you said, it is so little. Saying one little yes can have this big, big impact. A yes that's not aligned.
Yeah, unaligned, yes. Oh, man. It's so good. So I have a really interesting thing that I bumped into lately, a distinction that I want to run by you. Mm-hmm. I noticed that just because someone is an empath does not mean they have empathy.
Yes, different things.
Damn, I was assuming. You know what they say about assuming.
I know. You make a ASS out of you and me. But you can also have empathy and not be an empath.
Yep.
So, empath is about energy.
Mm-hmm.
That's all.
Yeah.
And also, I had this woman, some people, I have a lot of contrary beliefs and unconventional beliefs, paradox. But I do believe most empaths are created. Very few are born.
Ooh.
Being an empath is a response to your environment as a child. So it became a superpower because it is what you needed to do to survive.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with that 100%.
Mm-hmm. Now, there are some who just come into the world as these amazing healers that are meant to be empaths. Mm-hmm. And I do feel like all empaths, how you level up, so to speak, as an empath is understanding that you have the ability to transmute and transform energy and not just be the victim of energy.
Yes, yes, yes.
You can do that. An empath is very powerful. They can transform your energy. They can transform an entire room of energy if they're in their power and not in their victim. Like, oh, woe's me. The world's getting me. There's so much negative energy out here. I'm bogged down. And some of that is real. But some of that is going to, it's going to ask you to step up and get grounded and get together and pull in your power so that you don't walk around on a whim of the universe, of the world. Yeah. When you walk in and saying, I can really, shape shift this energy at my disposal the way I want it to do, what I want it to do with it.
I've been training myself in this way for the last year because I realized, and some of it through some teachers who I took on things that weren't mine in their teachings. I'm literally one of the most sensitive people you'll ever meet, but I decided I also really needed to be resilient because I'm unwilling to be debilitated by everything I see, sense, feel, and hear. Especially, and one of the things that tipped me into it is as I started to get, quote, woke, as they say, and really looking at and unpacking privilege and all these things in social justice and all these things, it was crushing me. And I was like, I can't be helpful if I'm debilitated. So, I need to up my resiliency. And so now I see I can be super, super sensitive, but also so resilient that I'm not getting bowled over by shit constantly. But it requires a diligence, right? If I'm not,
it's a groundedness in your body, and also you're right, and that's what I call. So in my practice, I call that building capacity.
Yes.
So people who were wounded in the past, they really do not have emotional capacity for most things. So it is about resilience and building capacity, and that's actually in ACE. They talk about that a lot. How they look at this resilience score, and they have this thing called resilience toolkit, that you have to build resilience. So these things happen to you. Yes, you're sensitive. Yes, but now you have to build capacity. You have to build resilience. You need to be able to be okay in a room of people, in a crowded room of people. Now, maybe is that something I want to do? Do I want to go to the Hollywood Bowl every single day of the week? No. But I need to be able to go to the Hollywood Bowl and not just run out there screaming like, oh, these people, I can't take groups. Yeah. You have to build capacity. Yeah. And you do that by being really seated and grounded in self and boundaries. If I don't want you up on my back at a concert, don't get on my back. That's one of my boundaries. I can't deal with you touching me like that. I can't deal with being that closed in. And it may mean that even in this concert, I need to go at some point and go to the stand where there's less people and get a breather and then come back.
Yes. I love... Oh, sorry. Finish that sentence.
I'm where there's ways to be in any energy. But you know you have to know your homeostasis energy, your default resident energy, so that you know that doesn't work for me. I can't work at the Hollywood Bowl. That would be the wrong career because I can't be there every single day. Mm-hmm. But I can be there. You know, I can go one day and I should be okay.
Yeah. What I love about this conversation so much is we've talked about healing and transformation in a couple different contexts, but the thread throughout everything that you have brought is know yourself.
Know yourself.
Know yourself.
Know yourself.
Take the time to know your damn self.
Know yourself. And that is, it's ongoing. Like I say, healing. People say, oh, heal this, healed. No such thing. Healing, ing, ... And knowing yourself is forever.
Yeah.
But you can get to know the root core of you.
Yeah, yeah.
And then then the other layers are something that changes. Because, 65-year-old Shanda may want to go snowboarding. 40-year-old Shanda does not want to do that. So, so that could change, some years to come. But the core of me has really been the same since I was born.
Yeah.
That true essence has been the same.
Yeah.
From birth.
You are great. I appreciate you so much. Where is the easiest and best place for people to get more Shanda in their life if they want to follow you, check out your stuff, know what you're up to?
Yeah, you can check me out in my online home, which is www.shandacatrice.com.
Cool. We'll put all that in the show notes. And then, is your Facebook profile public?
It was, but I made it like friends, but usually it's public.
Okay, cool. Because I just love, that's my favorite place to read, like what you've got going on, like the stuff that you share, that you post.
But I have a business page and I have a personal page.
And do you post all the same stuff in both places?
Same stuff.
Okay, cool. Places. And they can find you from your website.
At Shanda Catrice on Facebook.
Boom. Shanda, truly, thank you so much. Thank you for sharing your experiences, your wisdom, your practices. So. Like, I feel nourished by the conversation. It's my favorite bonus of having a podcast. So thank you so much. We'll see you later.
You're welcome.
And unity, that whole concept of unity really does, at its core, it says that folks have to conform to be together.
Right.
And when I'm in solidarity with you, I don't necessarily have to agree with everything you do. Right? But I know we're going the same way, right? Like we're trying to make that same outcome, right? But it is not the sense that you and I have to be you. Like I have to literally fit in to be accepted.
Yeah. So the distinction I'm hearing is unity requires conformity. Solidarity does not.
No, from my perspective, it does not require conformity. And solidarity is a way to show up so this unity tries to give you this undivided entity. Which we know isn't true and doesn't happen.
Right.
So, and solidarity, I don't have to be you to understand your humanity.
Yes.
I don't have to have your lived experience to know that you deserve health care. I don't have to be a woman in a wheelchair to know that woman in a wheelchair deserves all of these things. Simply because she's human.
Yeah.